Hi, my name is Julissa. I attended college back in 2007 to 2011. College was my first experience with depression and anxiety. When I was 18, back in '07, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. Women with with PCOS already are prone to depression and anxiety. So the fact that I was taking birth control at the time, or introduced to birth control at the time, it amplified my feelings and experience with depression and anxiety. It's lasted, honestly, ever since I was diagnosed, and I'm 32 now, so that's well over 10 years ago. But I will answer the questions. So, first question: any history or experiences that made you feel this way? In my family, there is history with mental health. I don't know if that contributed to me being depressed and anxiety and anxious because of the birth control that I was taking, but I want to say yes, there is a family history that made me more prone to anxiety and depression. Also, I'm sorry about the train in the background. Also, my diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome definitely aided my experience with depression and anxiety. So as far as any history or experiences that made you feel this way, yes, I definitely had history of, I guess, being susceptible to being anxious and depression, and experiences. Life just hit me that way. The fact that my body doesn't produce the hormones that it's supposed to produce, the fact that my body is the way that it is because of the PCOS made me anxious and depressed while I was in college. And I remember the first time I felt depressed, I was in my bedroom. I was studying, I believe it was chemistry, and I honestly wanted to kill myself right then and there. I had to stop, call a friend, and because I don't know what the hell was happening to me, but I had suicidal thoughts. So yeah, that's it. Second, how do you think others, non-college students or never went to college, would react to your opinion? At the time, I did speak to people about my experience and what I was going through. And people who weren't in college, my friends who were not in college yet, or because I had younger friends when I was 18, so I had younger friends who were 17, 16 years old. They were still in high school. They didn't understand anything. They thought it was just like, oh, she's in college. It's just what college students go through. I was called crazy. I don't know if it was something that they were joking about, but yeah, I was called crazy. Because I would literally tell my friends I wanted to kill myself. I don't know what's going on. I'm anxious and I'm nervous and I'm just jittery all the time, and coffee doesn't work and sleep doesn't work, and I just feel like I feel crazy. That's what I would tell them. So they thought, all right, this is just a phase. It's college, it's nothing serious. So I guess that's just how they reacted to it. People, I did have a friend who was majoring in psychology and women's studies. So she was a bit more empathetic and more compassionate towards me. She aided me in seeking help, and she also listened to me whenever I needed help. But yeah, everyone else thought I was crazy. Question number 3, how are you going to or have fixed this problem? I was very oblivious to the fact that I had a problem. I thought that it was because of the birth control. So I stopped the birth control, and the symptoms continued, of course, because with birth control, it takes a long time for things to get out of your system, and also depends on you as a person. So honestly, for years, I thought it was a result of the birth control, because I did stop for a year after the whole suicidal thing happened. But because I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, doctors always tell me to take birth control as a method to basically combat my PCOS and to help me ovulate. But every single birth control that I've tried has made me overly anxious and has made me absolutely depressed. Now, when I stopped birth control, the depression didn't leave. Neither did the anxiety. And it took me a very, very, very long time to cope with it. Back then, therapy was very expensive. I didn't have money, so I couldn't go to therapy. And honestly, I was very turned off to the fact of me trying to go and speak to a complete stranger about problems that I felt like they didn't understand. Because as a person with polycystic ovarian syndrome, doctors don't listen to you. Doctors never heard me. And even till this day, doctors still don't listen to me. They're not treating any underlying issue with PCOS. They're treating whatever it is that their textbooks tell them that they have to treat. So whenever, even until this day, whenever I go to a doctor, they're throwing birth control pills at me, which is my problem. I cannot have birth control. So how are you going to or have fixed this problem? I have yet to fix this problem. I am a 32-year-old woman, and I still suffer, or I'm sorry, not suffer, but I deal with depression and anxiety. I definitely do. It's changed my mental state. At a certain point in my life, in my early 20s, it changed it for the worse. I was coping with a lot of liquor. I was coping with promiscuity. I was coping with certain drugs. So it's been a horrible journey. But me now in my 30s, I'm being more self-aware. Whenever I do have depressive episodes, I reach out to friends. If I get anxiety, if I get anxious, I tend to meditate or I do yoga. But therapy definitely is a response, and it definitely is an answer. It just may not be for everyone, and when I was younger, it wasn't for me. Now, I'm more open to speaking to people about depression and anxiety. But yeah, I'm still trying to manage it, and I feel like things like that is something that you're gonna deal with forever. And me as a woman with PCOS, I feel like I'm just gonna deal with depression and anxiety, honestly, for the rest of my life. Next question: how would you define compassion? Compassion. I feel like compassion is it's a mix between sympathy and like pity. in a way, it's like sympathy and like feeling sorry for someone, but trying to make them feel better type thing. So I would define compassion as feeling sorry for someone, but trying to make them feel better. Relating to someone's feelings and trying to make them feel better. That's how I would define compassion. Question 5, during your experience and troubles, how has compassion been shown to you? To be honest, it really hasn't. Like I said, the only people that have shown some type of compassion and some type of sympathy or empathy are my friends. Specifically those who have dealt with anxiety or have anxiety, and specifically those who have PCOS, who know what it is that I'm going through, who have experienced different symptoms that I'm going through, that I still go through. And that one friend who studied psychology and women's studies, she's definitely been a rock for me to lean on, And she has shown me so much compassion. She's constantly checking up on me even to this day. And she's always referring like different therapists, or even entertaining the idea of her being a therapist there for me, which she basically is. But yeah, it's been shown to me, but it hasn't been shown to me by doctors. It hasn't been shown to me by elders. It hasn't been shown to me by most of my peers, but it has in some way. Some people have. Oh, that answers number 6. Who showed you compassion? Some friends. My mom never understood what polycystic ovarian syndrome is. She comes from a very outdated culture, outdated time. So she doesn't really understand. And for me to even begin to explain to her, but she's always there for me, so she backs everything up. She's more of a sympathy, not very compassion person. Number 7, have you met people with similar experiences? Do you show them compassion and empathy? Did you both help each other? Have I met people with depression and anxiety? Yes. Have I met people with depression and anxiety due to polycystic ovarian system and a system failing you and not listening to you when you told them that birth control is making you feel this way? No. I've never met anyone with my exact experience. I've never met anyone who was diagnosed with something genetic at 18 years old, who was given pills, who wanted to kill themselves because of those pills, whose mental state hasn't been altered since she took those hormonal pills that made her basically, or triggered her depression and anxiety. No, I haven't met anyone with my exact same experience, but I've met people with polycystic ovarian syndrome who have had a very, very tough time, and whose mental state has been altered because of the condition. I'm not sure it was altered because of the birth control they took, but I know for a fact, if you already have a family history, it just piggybacks on that. And I do have a family history of mental issues on my father's side. I'm not sure if it's comes from my father, but I know my sisters, some of them have like bipolar issues. Some of them have some other mental health issues. My brother himself, he had to cope with depression, but I believe that was due to my father's death. But these are things that are triggering these things in my family. But as far as me meeting someone, a person with polycystic ovarian syndrome who was triggered, whose depression and anxiety was triggered due to their condition and due to the ailments that were given to them to cure or help with their condition, no, I haven't met anyone exactly like me. But when people do have depression and anxiety, I am completely compassionate and empathetic towards them, because it's depression is like, how can I explain it? Depression is like being at a party with all your favorite people and not being able to enjoy it. Not because you're not enjoying it, but because you can't. Because your brain is basically telling you you're not worthy or something. And it's just that I definitely have compassion towards people with depression and anxiety. And I definitely try to help them. Therapy is always an answer. Meditation is always an answer. Yoga is always an answer. Reading is always an answer. I just try to help people with everything that I've used in my life to cope with my anxiety and depression, even when I don't understand it, because it can be very overwhelming. Question 8. Who are usually the people who don't understand your feelings with anxiety and depression as a college student? Back in college, it was the older people. Yeah, my elders did not understand depression and anxiety. Even to this day, if I was in college and I was young, my elders wouldn't understand depression and anxiety. They would think, oh, it's just stress. That's what they would mimic. That's what they would call it, stress. It's not depression, it's not anxiety, it's stress. And like I said, even to this day, I feel like the elders in my family and in my life still feel that way and still think that way. Oh, it's just stress. It's not depression. It's not. How can you be depressed? What are you depressed about? What are you anxious about? Like, those are the questions that would rise if I were to be vocal about my depression and anxiety. Even to this day, my own mother doesn't understand what depression and anxiety is. She knows that it's there. She knows that it's a feeling. She has experienced depression before and anxiety, but that was because of, simple money issues. But for her to be depressed or anxious because of something else, no. She doesn't fully understand what it is. And it's not only her. It's all of the elders in my family don't understand. The only person who does understand depression and anxiety and who is older than me is my brother. And that's because, like I said, he himself has dealt with depression and anxiety due to the death of my father. That triggered something and it stained him for a very long time. He still deals with it to this day. Because I feel like depression is something that you're just going to deal with. If it's something that's hereditary, or if you have a family history, or it's something that's, just triggered in you, I feel like you're always going to deal with some kind of depression after you deal with depression. Even if you, quote unquote, cured your depression. But yes, my elders did not understand what depression and anxiety was. And I feel it's because it's not only culture, but because of age-wise. But yeah. Question number 9. How had COVID affected yourself and mental self while in college? Well, I wasn't in college with COVID, but I can share how COVID has affected me during this pandemic. I live alone. In the beginning of COVID, I was perfectly fine in the beginning of COVID. I loved my time alone. I loved being here alone. It was very peaceful. Probably by like September of last year, I started getting a little anxious. August, September, I want to say a year ago, I started getting a little anxious. Depressed? No, I was just anxious, I guess. Yeah, I don't think COVID actually, I don't know. COVID helped me a little, I guess. I don't think it changed. I think I don't know. I think the time alone helped me. The fact that I wasn't really doing anything made me a little anxious, but for the most part, it really hasn't changed how I feel about being anxious or depressed. Nothing at all. Question 10, what key changes have happened to your anxiety or depression before and after COVID? It hasn't changed. Honestly, I don't feel any different. Depression, I do still have episodes. I've had many episodes of self-worth, which trigger depression for me. But that's something personal. It has nothing to do with COVID. It's just something personal that I've always dealt with. I've always dealt with self-worth issues and self-identity issues, which trigger my anxiety, which then trigger some depression in me. But it hasn't changed. COVID really is just made me lonelier because I live alone. And for a whole year, I really couldn't see anybody. So yeah, it definitely, I guess you can say it made me a little depressed because I couldn't see anyone and I was alone and I was sick for a long time. But yeah, I really can't pinpoint how it has changed, honestly. I really can't. 11, how has your definition changed since COVID has happened, if so? Or has your definition changed? My definition of depression and anxiety? No, because this is something, like I said, I'm 32 years old. This is something that polycystic ovarian syndrome is something that I was diagnosed with at 18. Depression and anxiety is something that I started to deal with when I was 18. I just understand it more now that I'm older, but it hasn't changed. It really, my anxiety has changed, in that I don't really get it much anymore, and when I do, I cope with it. Depression, I still don't know. Depression, it's just something that comes into me. It's just something that comes to me. It's not something that, like, it happens every day, or it's like on clockwork. It's sporadic. My depression, I believe my depression, it comes with my hormones. So if my body is overworked, if some changes happen hormonally to my body, that's when I start getting anxious and depressed. But yeah, I don't think my definition for depression and anxiety has changed. Solely also because I'm still learning about it, and I'm still discovering new things about myself. But yes, again, my name is Julissa. And those were my answers to your questions. I hope it helped. Thank you.
An experience that made me feel anxiety and depression is when the professor assigns an assignment with little time to work on it and asks of us to present in front of the class. I think that non-college students and even students who never went to college could understand this experience, because even in primary and secondary school you had to do projects in front of class. To fix this problem, I'm currently taking a communication class called Public Speaking to fix my anxiety and depression of not being able to do work on time and having to speak to a large audience. Personally, I define compassion as worrying about others' feelings and understanding those emotions to do something thoughtful and decent in order to put yourself in their shoes. During my experiences and troubles, some compassion has been shown to me through extended due dates. The person who has shown me this compassion is my professor. Yes, I have met someone with a similar experience. We worked together on a project and helped each other out in order to understand each other's feelings, which demonstrate compassion. A lot of people understand my anxiety and depression, even in my experience, though I would feel primary students will have a hard time understanding the feelings of anxiety and depression. I think that COVID did not have an effect on me or my mental health because I am an introvert when going to college and an extrovert at home. There have been no key changes to my depression and my anxiety after and before COVID. My definition has not changed since COVID started.